The unexpected invitation. The silence that fell over Kingsley's, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, was so thick it seemed to have weight. The clinking of cutlery ceased. The hushed conversations of New York's elite died on their lips. 100 pairs of eyes were fixed on the small space between the tables where 10-year-old Lucas Montgomery was visibly trembling. His legs, trapped in metal braces, wavered as he reached out for Diana Johnson, the restaurant's only black server. A pianist in the corner had just begun a soft melody, and the boy's sudden lurch toward the sound of the music had brought dinner to a grinding halt. "Mr. Montgomery, my sincerest apologies. This is highly inappropriate." Manager Thornton's sharp whisper cut through the tension. "This is not a dance hall, and our employees are not here to entertain your children." Richard Montgomery, the titan behind Montgomery Real Estate and one of the wealthiest men in the country, swallowed hard. It was the first time he had taken Lucas out to a public dinner since the accident 2 years ago that had partially paralyzed his son's legs, a mistake he had sworn never to repeat. "Lucas, sit down." His order was low but firm. Diana remained motionless, her gaze shifting between the manager, the billionaire, and the boy whose hand was still hanging in the air. In her 5 years working there, she had learned to be invisible, especially to men like Montgomery. "Mr. Thornton, I'm clocking out. My shift is over." Her voice rang calm as she removed her apron and placed it on a tray. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she smiled at Lucas and took his hand. "I can't dance in an apron." Richard rose abruptly. "What do you think you're doing?" Diana held his gaze. "I'm accepting an invitation, sir." Before anyone could intervene, Lucas took a tentative step. His foot scraped agonizingly across the polished floor, the metal of his braces screeching. But Diana did not try to lead him or rush him. She simply matched her pace to his. "She's getting fired tomorrow," a woman at the next table whispered to her husband. Richard watched, frozen. A memory suddenly struck him of his late wife, Elizabeth, dancing with Lucas in their living room. "It's not about perfection," she had said. "It's about connection." As Diana followed Lucas' clumsy steps, something in the boy's eyes changed. Fear gave way to fierce concentration. Shame gave way to shy pride. For the first time since the accident, he was not being led, helped, or corrected. He was leading. "Mr. Montgomery," the manager's voice interrupted his thoughts. "I can assure you, this will never happen again. She will be properly disciplined." Richard did not answer. The entire restaurant seemed to be waiting for his reaction. After all, a man of his power could end anyone's career with a single word. Servers stopped what they were doing. Other patrons watched with morbid curiosity. Lucas' laughter, however, was the only sound that echoed in his mind. After 3 more shaky dance steps, Diana led the boy back to the table. "Thank you for asking me," he said formally, as if speaking to an adult. "It was an honor." When she turned to leave, Richard stopped her. "Wait." His voice sounded different, almost unrecognizable to himself. "What's your full name?" "Diana Johnson, sir." Richard nodded slowly. "Diana Johnson," he repeated, as if committing it to memory. Then he took a card from the inside of his jacket and held it out to her. "My office, tomorrow at 10 a.m. The entire restaurant held its breath. Diana accepted the card without showing any emotion, but her hand trembled slightly. "Dad," Lucas said after she had gone, "why did you do that?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Richard looked at his son and for a brief moment saw not just the boy Elizabeth had left in his care, but a whole person whose desires and needs he had systematically neglected for 2 years. As the dinner proceeded in uncomfortable silence, no one noticed Diana's glance back before she left. It was not one of fear or resignation, but of a quiet determination that contrasted with the storm brewing in Richard Montgomery's eyes. The lobby of Montgomery Tower sparkled with its glass and marble walls, reflecting the morning sun. Diana Johnson felt immediately out of place in her best dress, a navy blue skirt and white blouse bought on sale. "Diana Johnson to see Mr. Montgomery," she said to the receptionist, who examined her with mild curiosity before making a call. "18th floor. Miss Winters will see you." In the elevator, Diana took a deep breath, clutching her worn handbag to her chest. It wasn't fear she felt. It was a quiet resolve that came from having faced worse, much worse. Miss Winters was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an impeccable posture. "Mr. Montgomery is on a conference call. Please follow me." As they walked through the glass labyrinth, Diana felt the curious glances of employees. A black woman being ushered through the corporate offices was a rare enough occurrence to cause speculation. "Did he have you fired?" Winters asked abruptly when they were alone in the waiting room. "It happens. Powerful clients call, and people just lose their jobs. People like me. You know what I mean." Winters adjusted her glasses. "Employees who don't know their place." Diana smiled, but not with amusement. "And where exactly would that be?" Before Winters could answer, her phone rang. "I'll see you now." Richard Montgomery's office took up half the floor. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan looked like a distant theater. The man stood with his back to her, surveying the city as if it were his personal property. "Mr. Montgomery." Diana greeted him formally. Richard turned, his face a mask of studied control. "Miss Johnson, thank you for coming." He gestured to a chair. "Please." The silence that followed was calculated, a tactic Diana recognized immediately. It was the kind of silence designed to make nervous people talk too much, to incriminate themselves. "Do you have a background?" Richard finally asked. "I mean, education, college." Diana kept her eyes steady. "Bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering from NU, an incomplete master's degree in special education." Something flickered across Richard's face. Surprise, perhaps. "And you work as a server?" "I work 3 jobs, actually. The restaurant, a bookstore on weekends, and as a tutor when I can get students." Richard moved to his desk, picking up a folder. "I did some looking into you, Miss Johnson. I wanted to understand who the person was who," and he hesitated, "danced with my son." He opened the folder, revealing printed photos of a community center. "Freedom Steps, a foundation you co-founded 6 years ago." Diana sat up straighter in her chair. "With my sister, Zoe, a dance program for children with physical disabilities." Richard thumbed through some documents, "which is now on the verge of bankruptcy due to a lack of funding." Diana showed no surprise. Of course, he would find all of that out in less than 24 hours. "I didn't come here to ask you for money, Mr. Montgomery." "Then why did you come?" "Because you called me." Richard smiled softly, a joyless sound. "Fair enough." He stood up again, restless. "I want you to work for me." Diana blinked, genuinely taken aback. "As a server in your home?" Richard's face hardened. "As a therapeutic companion for Lucas." The name of his son seemed difficult for him to say. Diana noticed his eyes, for a momentary instant, dart to a photo on his desk. A smiling woman holding a baby. "I have the best therapists in the country," Richard continued. "Physical therapists, neurologists, psychologists. But what you did yesterday," he paused, as if the words betrayed him, "that was not therapy. That was a dance." It was the first time I've seen him smile since the accident. "I don't want a caregiver for my son. I want someone who can do what you did, to follow, not to lead." Diana studied the man in front of her. Beneath the facade of power and control, she saw what others did not. A desperate, lost father. "He'll pay you 5 times what you're making now." Diana stood up. "No." Richard looked appalled, like someone unaccustomed to hearing that word. "I don't need to work for someone who sees me as a problem to be solved with money," she said calmly. "And I certainly don't want to work for people who try to buy solutions to emotional problems." Richard's face flushed. "You're turning down an offer that would solve all your financial problems out of pride, out of dignity, because your son deserves more than someone hired to feign care," she corrected him. She walked to the door, then stopped. "Lucas doesn't need more experts. He needs space to lead his own life." "You don't know my son." "No," Diana agreed. "But I know people like him. People whose physical limitations are nothing compared to the invisible cages people build around them." She took a card from her handbag and placed it on the desk. "Our Freedom Steps classes are at the community center on 5th and 400 p.m. Wednesday. If you'd like to bring Lucas, the first class is free. As Diana left, she passed Winters, who had clearly been listening behind the door. You just turned down an offer from Richard Montgomery, she whispered, incredulously. Are you insane? Diana smiled. Maybe, but I'd rather be crazy than be owned. If you subscribe to our channel, you can see the second part of the story.